spent a couple weeks in county jail. On the first day, when we were all being processed into the facility, strip, bend over, spread your cheeks, and cough, we were told very succinctly to never ever even joke about suicide while in the facility. Kinda like how you just don't say, bomb, on an airplane anymore. By day 3, I had a good understanding of the other guys I was locked up with. I was physically the biggest of the white guys in our pod, so all the white kids huddled around my table at meals to keep away from the Hispanic folks and the black folk. Yes, there are 3 teams in correctional facilities whether you like it or not. There was one kid in the group that seemed underdeveloped mentally. He probably had a learning disability among other things, but he essentially acted like a 12-year-old. I knew early on he was going to get himself in trouble because he never stopped talking or moving and he was rubbing everyone the wrong way. I tried to tell him to chill out and be invisible, but he was not understanding what I was telling him. I had been there a week when the 12-year-old finally lost his cool completely. He was in the shower, singing and joking around, putting on a performance that went too far, and he pooped on the floor as a joke. After the other guys in the shower grabbed their towels and ran, he proceeded to kick the poop all over the walls and into the other shower stalls. I didn't shower for the rest of my stay, truth be told. It turned into a big scene, and then when the trustees came in to clean up the poop all over the walls, it turned into an even bigger scene. The whole time, the 12-year-old was locked in a cell near the showers laughing and joking as other inmates had to clean up his poop and make the shower area sanitary again. State-run facilities have standards after all. The next day, everyone was looking at the 12-year-old with hate in their eyes. Kinda like Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket. Everyone missed their showers the day prior due to the poopsident, and then the kid was still up to his antics at breakfast the next day. Everyone got really cold toward him, even openly mean. I'll admit, I started ignoring him completely after the poop. It took him a day or 2 to realize he was hated by all, and then his personality changed dramatically. He became sad, despondent, and started talking to the COs because the other inmates wouldn't talk to him anymore. He fucked up, and told the COs that he should just harm himself and make everyone happy, and that was all it took. They dragged out the blue burrito. This is the scariest thing I had seen in jail. The blue burrito was a 10-foot-long blue foam mat, like you would use in gym class, with 2 12-foot-long red belts attached. They laid it out on the floor, forced the 12-year-old to lay on the mat, and then they rolled him up with his arms at his sides into the blue burrito. The 2 long red belts clipped together at the top and bottom of the burrito, keeping it all nice and tight. This was the suicide protocol at the jail. No counseling, no medical ward. You lose the ability to move. They put that poor bastard in the burrito around 8 p.m., dragged him into his cell and left him laying on the floor, wrapped up tight, until breakfast the next morning, around 8 a.m. The child molesters and gang members in protective custody get to eat breakfast first. Imagine being unable to move, barely able to breathe, with no end in sight for 12 hours on the floor of your 8x8 cell. My cell was up above his, and I heard him weeping and moaning in agony all night. He didn't say a word to anyone, or look anyone in the eye for that matter, for the rest of the time I was there. One night in the blue burrito broke him. Not a prisoner, but an ex-guard. I worked at a juvenile detention facility in Mexico. The absolute scariest thing I ever saw was a young boy, 9 years old, booked in for murdering both of his parents. There was nothing there. I failed to call this thing even human. I looked into this child's eyes and felt more fear than I'll ever have to this day. This was no child, it was a monster, pure evil, condensed and given human form. And to clarify, I had booked and looked after murder suspects before. It was nothing new, but this kid was different, very different. He never broke any rules and always followed commands, but never, ever spoke unless directly asked something. And then it was curt, short, just to answer a question. He never cried, either, which is highly unusual for a 9-year-old kid in jail. He was eventually tried and transferred to mental facility, but I'll never forget the kid's eyes. It haunts me to this day. Prison officer here. If any of the ex-cons are reading this, they may get a laugh out of it. I was working in a high-security at-risk unit, where we housed prisoners with suicidal tendencies. One prisoner in particular liked to fill his mouth with his piss and shit and spit it on you through the gaps in the doors. One day I forgot to walk wide of his cell, and all of a sudden, bam, he hit the inside of the door with the palm of his hand, Fuck, it gave me a jolt, and I've been an officer for 13 years. When I turned towards his cell, I yelled as loud as I could. He got fried and swallowed pretty much all he had in his mouth. Within seconds, there was projectile vomiting from the prisoner. The fucked up part was that we had to clean the cell as the prisoner was taken to medical for obs. Piss, shit, vomit. LT was bad. It's a tough job sometimes. Where L was, the guard towers were armed with a variety of less than lethal firearms. A fight started on the breezeway, main walkway between units. You hear the siren and you have about 10 seconds. Sit on your ass and cover your head to protect from OC overspray. Else, the guards start shooting shotguns loaded with rubber balls at you. One of the guards hit one of the guys fighting directly in the sack with a rubber ball round. Turned the front of his jeans red by the time they got him up into the infirmary. Apparently lost a testicle due to rupture. Obligatory, not a prisoner but an ex-correctional officer. I once had to work overtime in a segregation unit. The first thing that happens upon entering this unit is we get a call that an inmate who was out on a medical trip was coming back in, and was to be placed into a suicide watch cell. This inmate had been taken to an outside hospital for cutting his arm from his wrist to his bicep. We placed him in the suicide watch cell and went to find a bed mat for him, which was hard cause he couldn't have one with a hole in it while being on suicide watch. He told me that if I didn't get him a bed mat in 5 minutes, he was going to start ripping stitches. I told him to wait, went to find a mat, and it had apparently been 6 minutes, cause by the time got back, he had torn off his bandages and ripped out every single stitch in his arm. The blood was all over the place. We could easily see the muscle and fat in his arm. He agreed to cuff up, and went on his merry way back to the outside hospital. I later found out he had only initially done it cause he wanted to get out of prison for a while. That fact alone messed me up. I was in jail once waiting to see a judge. They'd moved me to 3 different jails in 3 days for some reason. I wasn't a troublemaker and was only in for driving on a suspended license, but I am big and scary looking. Anyways, when they transferred me to court, I was handcuffed to someone serving life and he was Aryan Brotherhood. I'm Hispanic, but look completely white and have a shaved head. He told me blacks were greenlit, and that I had to swing on sight. If I saw a black man within reach, I was required to fight him, or they would beat or kill me later. It was a scary, and luckily the COs were aware and kept everyone separate until the green light ended. A friend of mine did a short stint. From what he told me, he was supposed to get paperwork detailing his charges before he got to prison, but did not. This made the other prisoners suspicious as they believed he was a snitch, was trying to hide that fact from them, and they threatened to beat him. An old acquaintance of his was in there and assured my friend that he had nothing to worry about as they had been threatening him for months and nothing had happened. That night while my friend was making his bed, a few prisoners ran into his acquaintance's cell and beat him to within inches of his life. They were bouncing the guy's head off of the concrete to the point that my friend could hear it. My buddy says that's the moment that scared him straight. Not me, but my husband was in prison as a young adult. He said that they had a way of checking for ego. In the spot he was at, the toughest guys would come up to you on your first day and ask how many push-ups you could do. If you were smart, you would just sort of blow it off or laugh it off and move on. If you were a stupid show-off or had something to prove, you would claim a large number or talk yourself up. If you did that, then they would be all friendly and be like, "Oh, let's see it." So the poor guy would do as many push-ups as they could. The tough guys would gas the new guy up, acting friendly, pushing him to do more. They acted impressed and joked around. Then as soon as the new guy had done as many push-ups as possible, they would jump him and beat him up. He would be helpless to resist because he had maxed himself out on push-ups. Afterwards, any guy with an ego was normally really quiet for the remainder of their stay.